Welcome to CHURCHepreneurs Podcast. My name is Richard Moore. I'm your host and informant for everything church, theology, and faith related. CHURCHepreneurs' vision is to accelerate the church in mission, vision, and effectiveness in fulfilling the Great Commission in our communities. CHURCHepreneurs hopes to embolden people to fulfill the Great Commission beyond their own borders into the rest of the world within this generation. In this podcast, I talk about everything that's moving me in relation to church, theology, and hopefully to empower you in your ministry, church, Bible study, theological understanding, and most importantly, your personal growth in Christ. So today, I understand I could certainly be alienating quite a bit of our viewers. I am obviously wearing a Beat Stanford t-shirt. Go Cal. Yeah, there you have it. I'm wearing it. I did it. I said it. I lived in the Bay Area for about 9 years and became a Cal fan. Became a Oakland Golden State Warriors fan as well. Never could quite come to becoming a Raiders fan. Saw a few San Francisco Giants games, saw a few A's games, and just enjoyed the sports scene there. But I definitely became a Cal fan. Went to several Cal games. Just people give tickets. There was a lot of folks in our church there in Oakland and San Leandro who were Cal fans. And so one time I spoke at a Athletes in Action group at Cal. I said I'll come to speak at your group on one condition, and it was if you get me a Beat Stanford t-shirt. And so that was the time when Stanford game was coming on, and so I asked for that, and they delivered. So here it is. Here's my Beat Stanford t-shirt. I gotta represent, and they still show it. I mean, every game they show that ending where the band marches on the field at every game. And I literally, before the game starts, they show that ending where the band marches on. They think the game's over, and they, and Cal had lateraled until they scored a touchdown. And that was the end of the game. And the guy takes the football and smashes it on the tuba player's head. So they love it, man. I am a Cal fan, not by birth, but by adoption. So anyway, so I just kind of come into the family gratefully, and I get to wear it just because I can. Anyways, so here we are today on CHURCHepreneurs. A little fun, right? Come on, let's have some fun. So today on CHURCHepreneurs, I want to ask the question and do a little self-reflection as well. Why aren't pastors more curious? In my experience, pastors are largely uncurious about people, about new things. And this is maybe sort of a relatively new development in I want to say maybe it's a result of the modern church movement, of contemporary Christianity. So this was a blog post I wrote quite a long time ago, but it starts to keep coming back here and there, and I want to just revisit it. Yeah, so if you don't mind humoring me today, I want to address this issue and sort of hopefully it's a true encouragement to you pastors. But I want to hit you a little bit before I build you back up. Pastoral ministry requires a person to be curious and genuinely curious about other people. Over the years, I found that ministry requires me to be curious. So when I was a youth pastor, I had to be curious about people. You meet new people all the time. Young people come in, and in youth ministry, you've got this consistent rotation of from 9th to 12th grade, you're meeting a new class of young people every year, and you're graduating people every year, hopefully. And so early on in ministry, I noticed I've got to be a really curious person about people. When I say curious, I mean curious about people. I noticed that I was genuinely, probably really uncurious, sadly, and arrogant, and to my everlasting shame, proud. And early on in ministry, I noticed that was really not going to work out. A mentor pointed this out to me early on, before I spent my years in California, and it was hard to hear. Basically, he said, "You're proud, you're arrogant," and so. But it was the best thing that he could have done for me. I'll be honest. I went on a weekend retreat with this mentor. He was my Bible college mentor and a professor at the Bible college I went to. He asked me to come on a retreat with him. He was speaking. And on our way there to the retreat, he said to me, "Richard, you interrupt people all the time. Did you know that?" And I was like, wow, no, I didn't know that. And I was sort of shocked. He said, "You interrupt." So we had dinner right before we left. And he said, "You interrupted my wife at dinner at least a dozen times." And he said they were looking at each other like, who is this guy? What's he doing here? And then he said something that really was quite life-changing. And pastors, you can take a clue on this as well. He said, "I'm going to observe you over the weekend and let you know what I think, what I notice, and maybe why this is happening. And we're ministering together." So he did that. He observed me over the weekend. And at the end of the weekend, he told me he felt like, as an observation of my personality, what I did over the weekend, he said that he realized what was going on, and he told me that he felt like I cared more about myself and what I wanted to say than other people and what was on their minds. Whew. Boy, this hurt to hear for sure. It cut, but it was so eye-opening. I realized I needed to overhaul my life, my pride, and my lack of curiosity. I needed to really become more selfless and genuinely begin caring about people's souls, their interests, their passions, and their needs. And I didn't do that up to that point. Now, I was young at the time, but I tell you, it really, really rocked me and helped me to see. I didn't know before. I didn't know. You don't know what you don't know, right? You can't fix what you don't know. And so this really, really rocked me at the time and helped so much. And so James, the brother of Jesus, has this wise advice for us. Pastors, take heed. When we're tempted to speak first in any situation, like I was, I wanted to just, here I'm going to show you my wisdom. I'm going to show you my incredible spiritual discernment and leadership and everything. And he says it in James 1:19. He says, "You must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." We need to choose first to listen and understand and ask questions. So pastors, just that was my little bit of self-reflection. I still get it from my wife now. I mean, this is, maybe that might have been 20 years ago that mentor shared that with me, that tidbit, and it helped a ton. But now 20 years later, my wife still says, "You interrupt people. You want your own agenda. You're always sharing your thoughts and never letting people interrupt you." So it's not just that you interrupt others. For me, it's she says you interrupt and don't let other people interrupt you and get into your discussion. So it still happens, and I'm working on it. I'm continue to work on it, but it's a consistent thing, and so we have to become pastors more people oriented and become more curious about. And this is not just for pastors. This is for everyone who's a Christian. Become more curious. So I hope this applies to all people who are listening. The questions I would pose to you for some self-reflection are, do you come into groups of people and begin immediately to talk about yourself and what's happening with you? Oh boy, that's that hits close to home. Do you, like me, interrupt people when they're in the middle of a sentence or thought? Do you rush to interject your opinion and tell a story about yourself or somehow self-promote? Or do you listen to someone's thought all the way through and naturally interject then when they're done with their thought or their sentence? Do you ask questions of people? Do you seek to get to know people beyond the surface level? For us, growing up in our family, it was kind of funny. Do you ask questions of people? Do you seek to get to know people beyond the surface level? And growing up in our family, my dad asked. We had a funny thing. If someone else knew he would meet or whatever, he would come to the house or come to dinner or whatever. He'd ask 20 questions. So he's like, okay, here comes 20 questions. And funny. I realized the wisdom of that. If you don't ask questions of people, how do you know? Right? How do you get to know folks without knowing what they're going through, knowing their lives, asking questions? People don't reject talking about themselves. They want to talk about themselves. Asking questions can really bring people out of their shells. And you can really get to know people beyond the surface level. How do you know people's needs if you don't ask questions? How do you know people's personalities, how they're wired, what they love, and what they're really interested in? Then fourth, have people ever made these types of comments to you? You talk too much, or you interrupt me all the time, or you're not listening to me. That could be an indicator that we're not curious enough. So these are just, again, some questions for self-reflection. Do people seem to pull away from you after a while? Even people you've considered friends for a long time, that could maybe be an indicator that you're not curious enough, that you're not people-focused, that you're not focused on people's needs and what they're going through. Instead, you're a little bit more self-interested. So in order to become deeply caring and curious people, we need to be transformed by Jesus. For me, it's happening in my own life as I submit to the direction of the Holy Spirit. Like I said, my wife still sharpens me. She knows my struggles and challenges and says often, "You're not listening," or "You aren't listening to me. You're interrupting." And she'll graciously point out, "You haven't heard what I'm saying." And even not just, a lot of times I'll just either I'm zoning out or I'm not present. I had a gentleman who was a mentor as well in California. He said, "Richard, wherever you are, be there." And that is such great advice. I mean, be present. Guys, pastors, dads, when you go home, you tend to check out and you turn your mind off, turn the TV on, whatever. And I'm the same way. I tend to check out, I just zone out, and a glazed over look. And guys, that's our big struggle. So not just listening, but listening to what's being said, listening to what's behind the thing, listening to emotion and feeling. And so we can grow by asking other people who are close to us, do you feel like you're listened to or you're heard by me? And then you can ask others as well, mentors and other people in your life, do I have blind spots in my character? Do you see something that I have a blind spot in? So these are just a few ways we can take some self-inventory in this area? Why aren't we curious? Why do I not pay attention to others? Our culture is head over heels for celebrities, starved for information about the rich and famous, but our Christ calls us to minister to the poor, the marginalized, the hurting, the unpopular, the unfamous. Christ is calling his church to be genuinely curious about those that cannot repay you or return the favor. Jesus said these words in Luke 14:12 through 14. When you give a dinner or a banquet, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors, lest they also invite you in return and be repaid. But when you give a feast, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the just. So let us, with fresh vision, obey the words of Jesus, and with great curiosity, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. One time I was on a discussion panel for disability in ministry and in the church, and a woman sat next to me, an older woman who had a older daughter, 21-year-old daughter, I believe at the time, who had cerebral palsy. And she had mentioned on that board, on that panel, that she had never been invited to someone's home for dinner at that church. The pastor preached, she said, one Sunday on this passage. And she finally thought, today's the day. I'm going to be invited by someone today. So she wheeled her daughter right out into the foyer, right in front of the sanctuary, turned her around, parked her so that people would have to walk by her to leave the church. And she said she got not one single invitation. Oh, man, it hurt my heart so badly. The pastor had just preached on invite the poor, the crippled, the lame. Her daughter was right there. And she just was begging for an invitation to someone's home. This hurt my heart so badly. I tell you, church, let's not miss that opportunity. That church had missed an opportunity to love someone and to be curious about someone who was in deep, deep need of fellowship and compassion and love. Let us not miss those opportunities. As pastors, elders, youth pastors, children's ministers, worship pastors, and anyone else who works for the church, your job, first of all, is a theological endeavor. And what is theology? It is explaining God to people. So your job is making God known to people. How can you do that if you aren't curious? In the New Testament, we have these one another statements or phrases, and in the New Testament, one another, the phrase one another, is used 100 times. There are 100 verses where that phrase appears. 47 of those are instructions to believers, to one another commands or one another encouragements or what have you. 4 of them are about kissing. So sorry, worship leaders, there's no sloppy wet kisses or even unforeseen kisses. They're greet each other with a holy kiss type thing. So sorry about that. The unforeseen kiss versus the sloppy wet kiss. None of that. It's all copacetic. It's all good. Greet each other with a holy kiss. So just highlight that there for you. Some of the one another's are love one another, be devoted to one another in love, Romans 12:10. Through love, serve one another. Galatians 5:13. Regard one another as more important than yourselves. Bear one another's burdens. Galatians 6:2. And pray for one another. So I hope this has been sort of a wake-up call, maybe. I've noticed this deep incuriosity in pastors in the last years. And a lot of it probably has to do with us being so focused on our computers. We get to our office, the computer, we focus on emails, and we're focused on connecting with people via social media, but never connecting further with people beyond that. And that's a sad scenario. Now, use those tools, of course, please. I mean, look, I'm sitting in front of a computer here. I'm doing a podcast, trying to touch people's lives. But in your interpersonal relationships, please think about this and become more and more curious about people. Go visit people. Go to the hospital. When a person calls your church and says, I'm going into the hospital for surgery or this, that, the other thing, they want you to come visit them. Otherwise, they wouldn't call you. They would call their small group leader or call someone else. People want you to visit them. Go visit people. Call someone up. Say, hey, can I come by your work today? I just want to pop in for a few minutes, just see how you're doing. Maybe pray with you for a few minutes. Or not pray. Just go be curious about someone's workplace, pastor. Go to schools, youth ministers. Try to be involved in the school system. Go to schools, go to after schools. One year in San Leandro, I just called the principal up and I said, I know you guys are understaffed this year. Not only understaffed, but your budget has been cut drastically in the school district. Let me know how I can serve the school and fill any gap, fill any hole. Put me to work in some way. She was like, wow, you would do that? Yeah, I'm here to serve this community and love people. Tell me what I can do if there's any gaps. And she said, let me think about it. And so she called me back in about a week, I believe, and said, can you come and do an after-school program? I thought, wow, actually, that's a great opportunity. I thought I'd be doing something else. I handed out bag lunches for the kids after their after-school program for about 6 months. I went at 3:30 maybe, after school, and I just handed out lunches. I was in charge of getting them lunches, cleaning up after them, and that's it for 6 months. I filled a hole. Loved people, got to know kids. And then after about 6 months, the coaches realized I was decent at basketball. And they said, hey, what about you doing just shooting some hoops with some guys after they've done their after school thing, where they're going to help or whatever, then shoot some hoops. So we started shooting hoops, gave out the bag lunch, started shooting hoops. Then after that, about 6 months of that, they said, how about we're thinking about doing a sports program after school, just like sort of PE type. Would you be willing to get some games going? I'm shooting hoops. Why not? Sure, let's get some games going. I'll ref a few games. We're building relationships. We had some after school games. Then they started adding soccer. They add soccer to after school. Then we had basketball. Then they had the curriculum, whatever the after school curriculum was. And then pretty soon, some of the coaches got to know me like, who are you, bro? Like, you're pretty decent at basketball. You interested in helping some of the basketball teams? Sure, why not? Be interested in people. I'm there for people. I'm there for the teenagers of this school. Then after a little while, I was helping with the JV team. The varsity coaches pulled me up for some help for this and that and the other thing. Now, that was my specialty. I mean, sports and basketball was what I could do, and they saw that. So the more you step into being curious about people, serving and loving your community, the more doors will open for you. And pretty soon, there I was, one of the varsity coaches, and I told them, this is my commitment. I can only do Wednesdays and one game a week. And they said, we're fine with that, because they realized that my addition and help to the team was valuable. And so then after games, it was funny. It was a great opportunity, just loving and caring about young people. After games, each coach would be able to put in a word or two to the team. Here's what we saw. Here's what we could do. And pretty soon, they all know I'm a youth pastor. They all know I'm a preacher. Coach says, "Hey, preach. What you got to say?" And so he called me out, like, here I am, preach. And so I'm preaching to the team. Sometimes I would bring a word of spiritual wisdom in. Sometimes I would just say, like, one time we almost lost a game because one of the kids dunked on another kid and the whole gym went crazy. I was like, hey guys, we almost lost that game because we went crazy, you know? And so I could put it, and he actually, the coach afterwards said, man, Richard, that was really good. Because we almost lost the game because the whole gym went ballistic after some kid got dunked on. And so, I mean, there's just opportunities like that. If you step through and say, I'm going to be curious about people, I'm going to make people my focus in ministry, then things will happen. Doors will open. And then throughout the years, I was seen as a real bonus to the school there in San Leandro. I was a coach for a couple years on the basketball team. Just a well-respected person in the community. People looked to me for help and for care for the youth and teenagers in that area. That's what happens when you put people first and focus your ministry on people. So primarily, pastor, leader in churches, your ministry is theological. And what theology is explaining God to people. And in that endeavor, you have to be curious about people. You have to reach out to people, ask questions, do stuff in the community, go to campuses, go to schools, go to workplaces, go to events, go to kids' plays. If one of your people's kids are in a play, go to their play. I went to a lot of musicals in our school. There was always something to go to be invested in people, to put people first. Do that. Do the one anothering of the New Testament. Don't greet each other with a holy kiss. I mean, that's the one anothering. Greet one another with a holy kiss. That's not what we're talking about. Loving people, putting people's needs first, putting the needs of your congregation up there and reaching new people and being curious about those who you meet, those who you are in your circle of influence. Be curious, Pastor. And I hope this is an encouragement to you. I hope this is an encouragement to go take a step of faith out into the community, go take a step of faith out into the world, to love people for the kingdom of God and to reach people with the gospel of Jesus Christ by taking steps of curiosity into people's lives. So thanks for listening to this episode of CHURCHepreneurs. You can find out more information at my website at richardpmore.net. I also blog at richardpmore.blogspot.com. You're welcome to follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at richardpmore23. You can also email us at churchepreneurs@gmail.com. That's CHURChepreneurs@gmail.com. It's like taking church and entrepreneur and just throwing it into a salad. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any ideas for a podcast or any comments or questions, please reach out on one of those platforms. Thanks for listening. God bless you. Until next time, take care.